some easy numbers to remember is, so for me, if I want to know how much I should drink, this is a tricky question, right? And it's going to depend on how hot it is, how much I sweat, all that stuff. A good equation, remember, these are not rules, but they're more to get people a ballpark, to start practicing fueling. Most people are not practicing fueling. They're just, oh, I forgot to eat. I'm just going to eat something, or I'm hungry. So if I take my body weight and I divide it by 30, that's going to give you about how many fluid ounces per 15 minutes you need for a workout. So that's an easy number for people to remember. If you're a numbers person and you like saying, okay, we're going to be out for 4 hours on this rock, because there's going to be a certain point where you have to self-manage. Obviously, in SWIC and BMT, people tell you hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. When you get to selection, it is your responsibility to fuel and take care of your body within the context and equipment and calories provided. You are in charge of your fuel, and if you fall behind, that's because you didn't take it seriously enough, and that's the whole point. So knowing these can help people in their training practice, so then when they get to selection, they can just do whatever they can to survive. So obviously, right, I'm not a math person, but you get the idea. Now, what about for recovery? So let's say I go for a run and I weigh 180 pounds, and then I lose 3 pounds of water weight on my run. Well, for every pound of body weight lost in water, I would replace it with around 16 fluid ounces of, your electrolyte mix or anything like that, like a Pedialyte type solution. Okay? And the reason why I'm talking about something like that is, so let's say you go for a run and you're used to just having like 16 ounces of water after. Well, my goodness, if you lost 3 pounds, do you see how you're dehydrated? And you might have another session later in the pool, and you don't realize how much you're sweating in the pool. And you might have sweat off a lot of sodium, and you just had water because you didn't plan well, and now you're behind on sodium, which is going to limit you like crazy. So some other numbers people can remember is, how much fluid can my stomach handle per hour? This is a golden number, okay? Your stomach can process about 800 milliliters per hour if it's completely full. So a full stomach will actually empty faster than a partially full stomach. That's a great thing to remember. So if I'm going to go out and train in the hot and heat, which a lot of people are, I'm going to probably have 800 milliliters of a Pedialyte type solution an hour before, and I'm not going to eat. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want a bunch of food and sugar in my stomach, because then water is going to stay in the stomach to basically make sure it dilutes that. So what a lot of people do is to say, oh, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to eat a bunch of food in the hot environment and all that jazz. So they get a bunch of food in there, they swash down a Gatorade, and then they run and their stomach's all sloshing. So they're actually they're not absorbing water well. So here's your number to remember: 800 milliliters per hour on a full stomach of fluid. And if you have a half full stomach, you're going to only be able to process around 500 milliliters per hour. Peaches, why does that matter? What if I try to down 1.5 liters of water in 1 hour? Why would that be a problem?
You're going to be bloated to hell. And it's going to be very uncomfortable.
What happens to the balance between water and electrolytes?
Well, it won't be balanced.
Exactly. So you're going to start to head towards hyponatremia. So hydration is important. But if we start just taking down water, you can push yourself to a point where you're actually going hyponatremic. So a lot of people are coming to San Antonio, right? It's hot and humid. And so they think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be dehydrated. So they just start chugging water. So they chug like 1.5 liters. And then they go for a run, and then they start feeling like, oh my gosh, my world is ending. My pace is slowing.
And that is no joke. That has happened to me before. Like right. I've done it once, but I was a victim of that.
So we've got to be smart. So I want people, as we're breaking this down, to, like, everyone will say hydration is important. Dehydration is not something we want. Sleep is important, and we want to focus on it. But then they don't have any specifics or anything. They just, ready? How helpful is this? Just stay hydrated. That's not helpful. It's going to change based on my sweat rate. It's going to change based on how salty of a sweater I am. So if I'm coming to a hot environment, for the first couple of weeks, I'm going to sweat out more sodium than if you and I have spent 4 months in a hot environment, then I'll sweat out less sodium because that's one of the adaptations to heat. So why these numbers are important is because we want to make sure that we have enough fluid to be able to stay hydrated, but we don't want to actually now swing the fence and say, well, I just need to drink so much because I'm in San Antonio and I drink so much and actually go hyponatremic. You'll actually see that in the Ironman races. The people who actually DNF or do not finish are actually most of the time not dehydrated. They're actually hyponatremic.
They just pounded the water.
So what happens is they start hitting a wall. They get to an aid station. They start pounding way too much water. They start diluting. Basically, they don't have the proper ratios. Then they don't drink to thirst. So they start just drinking to cool off versus drinking when you're thirsty. So it's very important that we focus on drinking to thirst, unless you're kind of like a numbers person and you can take that body weight divided by 30.
When you say drink to thirst, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
A lot of people just be like, wow, I'm really hot. And then they'll just take sips of water. Drink to thirst is if you're like, wow, I think I'm kind of thirsty. I want something to drink. If you think about it 2 or 3 times, there probably actually are. If you think about it once briefly and it's fleeting, no worries. So the reason why we drink to thirst is because it's still the most accurate in terms of making sure that we get enough water because our body will let us know. And then number 2 is that we don't do too much when it comes to that. Because I can even say, well, I want to pour a bunch of electrolytes in my mix. And then people will put like 2 full electrolyte mixes in here. So their stomach has a ton of sodium in it. Because remember, if I have food in here, that has sodium as well and sugar. So we don't want to do too much sodium. We don't want to do too little. And so it's this balance point, right? And so that's why for a lot of people, if you alternate sipping between your electrolyte mix and water, so couple sips electrolyte, then when you feel thirsty, again, couple water, that's not the world's worst strategy.
Okay, so when companies like, and I'll just use them because Hoist, they have a powder. Cardomax has a certain amount, and it says mix with 20 fluid ounces, right? I have been using one of those 40-ounce hydro flasks because I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be out for a while. I may not So am I doing that incorrectly then? Should I just do 20 and then have a separate just spare water? That's
totally fine. That's totally fine.
All right.
I just want people to be a little bit smarter and realize that it's all about that Goldilocks, right? Not too much, not too little. There's all these popular podcasts right now talking about the power of salt and when it comes to hydration, for sure. And it's really hard when we're working out super hard to replace. We'll never replace salt. Sodium's always going to be lost, so it's really hard to do. But I want people to realize that if you have too much sodium and sugar in the gut and your gut can't handle it, water's going to stay in there. And why does that matter when we're in a hot, humid environment? So here's an example. You're about to go on a ruck because you want to ruck in the middle of the day. So you slam down a bunch of food, right? And then you slam a bunch of, you just chug a bunch of LMNT or something like that. You just got to realize that can stay in your gut and slosh around than actually being transported out of the gut and small intestine.